All right. So, thank you for joining us. We are going to go ahead and get started. Hi, I am Danielle Eminy. I work at SUNY Upstate Medical University as a senior financial aid advisor. Welcome to the 26-27 FAFSA and TAP training hosted by the New York State Financial Aid Administrators Association, lovingly referred to as NYSFA, and the New York State Higher Education Services Corporation, known as HESC, because in financial aid, we love our acronyms. This training event is geared towards professionals helping college-bound students with their financial aid applications. Whether you're the newest of newbies or the spiciest seasoned expert looking to enhance your skills, all are welcome today. A few housekeeping items before I introduce our fabulous speakers. There will not be a chat feature available for the session. So if you have questions, please feel free to use the Q&A box located near the bottom of your screen. We have some fantastic financial aid advisors behind the scenes who will be answering those questions real time, and we'll cover a few questions live as well. If you find that you're experiencing sound issues, I encourage you to try logging out and logging back into the session. Sometimes you just need a little reboot to get things up and running again. The first portion of this training will concentrate on the FAFSA application, and then the second half will center around the New York State payment application, which some of us older financial aid folks still call the TAP application. Since this application applies only to New York State residents, if you're joining us from another state, feel free to wander off and enjoy your next morning coffee and the free time that you have just gained back. The recordings and handouts will be available after the webinar on the New York State Financial Aid Administrators Association website, and I will be dropping a link to that momentarily into the Q&A for everyone to get. And I think I also have the ability to drop it in the chat, so I will do that once I stop talking because I can't type and talk at the same time. With that, I would like to introduce Renee Swift, who is a New York State Scholarship Supervisor at New York State HESC. She will be doing the FAFSA portion of the presentation, and then she'll be followed by Michael Turner, who is the Manager of Grants and Loan Forgiveness Programs at New York State HESC as well. And before we get started, Mike Turner would like to do a quick announcement.
Thank you, Danielle. Let me just do a quick little screen share so folks can see an event we'd like to promote. Does that look good on your end, Danielle? Yes. Okay. So this is our, we just wanted to make sure that our college access community is aware of an exciting upcoming event that we're planning, which is going to be our first ever New York State College Access Conference. It's going to be a one-day event designed for school counselors, financial aid professionals, other people who work in the college access community, focusing on providing tools, strategies, insights to strengthen our student support, boost FAFSA and TAP engagement, and help everyone stay ahead in a constantly changing financial aid landscape. The day's event will include a national keynote speaker, multiple workshop tracks tailored for both counselors and financial aid professionals, opportunities for networking and open discussion, and also an awards luncheon recognizing certain schools, professionals, and partners who go above and beyond to support our students. For now, we simply wanted to put this event on your radar and give you a save the date. More details are going to be coming over the next coming days. You can sign up at hesc.ny.gov/NYSCAC to get the latest updates about this exciting upcoming event. So with that, I will stop my share and toss it back to Renee to start the fun, exciting world of FAFSA.
Mike, good morning, and thank you for joining us today. 2.5 hours may seem like a long time, especially if you're doing a full body plank. But trust me, these next 2.5 hours are going to fly by. We've got a lot of information to share with you this morning. It's going to be pretty fast paced. Our team behind the scenes will be answering your questions in the Q&A box. And again, as Danielle mentioned, this session is being recorded. So if the course of us speaking really quickly to get as much information out as possible passes you by, you'll be able to go back and rewatch and re-listen to the session at your convenience. And as was mentioned, this session will be put up on the NYSFA website along with the handouts and resources that we will be referencing. Before we get to the FAFSA prototype, I just wanted to share my screen quickly on studentaid.gov. So this is the main financial aid, the federal financial aid resource for our students and families. I mean, we reference this a lot, and it's a great tool to help our families and students and you learn a little bit more about federal aid if that's not necessarily covered as in depth today as we can. But just wanted to draw your attention to these library items at the very top. It kind of starts from left to right. Leftmost is where our students and families are right now in the application process. So that's under the FAFSA form. And clicking on each one of them is going to show all of the items that are underneath. So obviously grants and loans are going to be further down the pipeline, and then loan repayment and forgiveness are even further down the loan or further down the financial aid pipeline. So again, I just wanted to bring this to your attention so that you have a good resource to share with your students and families. And I'm going to unshare and reshare again, get to the FAFSA prototype. And as I move my Zoom bar out of the way, and before I get into the nuts and bolts of this too, I also wanted to review a quick couple of concepts that will be helpful as you start counseling students and families through the financial aid application process. So the couple of new terms over the last couple of years, one is called a contributor. And this I like to think of, it helps me kind of keep it straight, thinking of as a contributor as the potential sets of tax data that will be on the FAFSA. So the student is always going to be a contributor, and depending on the parental marital status and tax filing status, that's going to determine how many parental contributors there will be on the FAFSA. And I will show you and demonstrate some tools within the prototype that can help students better navigate that particular question. Another newer concept is called consent and approval. And this is within the FAFSA where each contributor is providing their consent and approval for the IRS to bring in the appropriate tax information into the FAFSA. And for reference purposes for 26-27, that base tax year is going to be 2024. So that consent and approval is directly tied to aid eligibility, and we'll get into that a little bit more into the prototype as well. The other two concepts are not necessarily new, but are worth mentioning, and that is unusual circumstances, where a financial aid officer would make a student independent, where for all intents and purposes, they look dependent on paper. And this is commonly referred to as a dependency override. And our counselor partners that are listening this morning can play a pretty big role in that you know your students best, you know their situations, and you may be asked to provide a letter of support while the student is seeking this dependency override. The other is called special circumstances, and this is more related to the income elements that are on the FAFSA. So as I mentioned, the 2024 is the base year for the taxes, but we're now in 2025, late 2025, and this is a FAFSA for 26-27. So there's a lot of time in between where family finances can change, family dynamics can change, like with a divorce separation situation. So that would be where the student, again, would contact the financial aid office to discuss that a little bit further so that they can counsel them on the documentation that would be required. And a review also of unusual and special circumstances, like what doesn't count in those categories. If parents are refusing to contribute financially towards the college educational expenses of the student, if the parents are refusing to put their information on the FAFSA, if the student demonstrates self-sufficiency, and if the parent didn't claim the student on their tax returns. Those are not considered special or unusual circumstances. So enough jibber jabber on that. We're going to go ahead and get right into the prototype because I want to be mindful of time and I want to make sure that Mike has enough time to get through his portion of his presentation with the TAP payment application. So we're going to demonstrate this morning a dependent student because the majority of our students will fall into this category, and I feel like it's best to demonstrate the more plentiful population that it is for some that may not necessarily fall into that category. For independent students that don't need parental information on the FAFSA, the experience that you'll see demonstrated here is virtually the same except excluding the parents. So we're going to go ahead and launch Raya, who has been our demonstrating student for the last couple of years in the prototype. And I will say the prototype does have several limitations. It does do a decent job of demonstrating the functionality of certain parts of the FAFSA, but it's not going to be fully functional. And I will kind of call that out as we go along. The studentaid.gov setup, that unique username and password that each contributor is going to need is not demonstrated here. So it's assumed that it's already been set up. And we would strongly encourage our FAFSA contributors, student and parents, to get their studentaid.gov account set up at least a week to 10 days prior to sitting down to doing the FAFSA. It makes the experience so much more smooth, and we want this process to be as stress-free as possible. And getting this set up right now would be a great way to kind of get that financial aid application checklist well in hand. So the FSA ID, that studentaid.gov account, is going to take about 5 to 7 minutes to set up, and it's going to collect the address, phone number, email. There's challenge questions that we all love. They link their cell phone and their email to the studentaid.gov account, and they also get multi-factor authentication set up. So again, it's not unusual with this platform like other platforms that we're used to. And again, we would encourage our students and their parent contributors to at least get this part set up well in advance, a week to 10 days prior to sitting down to doing the FAFSA, because it does take sometimes up to 3 days for all of the confirmations behind the scenes to take place to verify the contributor's identity. We're going to go ahead and log in as Raya, and we're logging in to the FAFSA website itself, and we're met with 3 different options. So the first option is if you're starting the form right out of the box, right from scratch, you're going to be starting a brand new form. So that's what we're going to click on for this morning. But say, for example, Raya started her form and she had to step away from it for a moment. She saved it and is now coming back to it. She would select this option here. And a parent contributor coming in independently would come here to accept the invitation and to enter the student's FAFSA there. So we're going to go ahead and hit Start New Form, and we're going to log in. Again, we are logged in as Raya. And the FAFSA has been role-based now for the last few years, and that means that the student has their part to complete, and the parent has their part to complete, and they are completed independently. And once all of the contributors have completed their portion of the FAFSA, they get met up behind the scenes, and then the FAFSA is processed. So the FAFSA is not considered submitted until all contributors have done their part. So this morning, we're going to submit student role and hit continue. And the FAFSA has built in some onboarding here, which is going to help students and families better understand what's happening and what's to come. So for time purposes, we're not going to go into these. They're YouTube videos, very helpful, and students or you can look at those and glean a little bit more information to help our students. But I would draw your attention to this bulleted list here of the helpful documents to have nearby when completing the FAFSA. The FAFSA is going to require some information from taxes, so having the 2024 federal and state tax returns nearby, any child support received, current balances on checking and savings accounts, and the worth of investments, businesses, or farms. That information is just helpful to have nearby. Going forward to those contributors that we talked about, this link here is very helpful to kind of draw out all of the different scenarios of what contributor is going to be on the FAFSA. As I mentioned earlier, the student is always going to be a contributor regardless of their status, but it's going to depend on the parent's marital status and tax filing status of how many parent contributors there would be. And continuing with the onboarding, it says it's going to take about 30 minutes. I would suspect it's going to take a lot less given the fact that the majority of the tax information and the income information and the demographic information is going to float in as a result of the studentaid.gov login and the consent and approval process. We'll go ahead and get started. So as we said, we logged in as Raya. All of her information has come in through the studentaid.gov account. Her social security number, date of birth, phone number, her address, all of these things here, float right in and will not require any secondary data entry. So we would encourage, just again, to kind of keep a look at it, make sure everything is accurate. If anything would change in a future year of that demographic information, when a student logs into their studentaid.gov account, it would say, like for my studentaid.gov account, it says, "Hi, Renee," up in the upper right-hand corner. And there is a drop-down menu for settings, and you can go in there and make the changes in a future year if needed. We'll go ahead and hit continue. It's going to default as a result of the demographic information to New York State. And then we're going to put in the date of becoming a New York State resident. If the student has been a resident their whole life, they would put their birth month and year here. If they became a resident after they were born, they would put the appropriate month and year here. So we're going to put in for Raya that she was a resident. She's been a resident since she was born, and then hit continue. And here we are immediately met with the consent and approval process. And as I mentioned, this is a way for the IRS to populate the income information directly into the FAFSA. There's a lot of legal language here that a student can read or a parent can read, because this is going to be the same both on the student and the parent side of things. And we're not going to go through all of this in the interest of time. But I did want to bring to your attention the two options down here that you can give. So I'm going to demonstrate the decline one first. And I just want to confirm that this can be seen. It says student will not be eligible for federal student aid. So the Department of Education has been very clear that not providing consent and approval for the IRS to bring that information into the FAFSA, the student will not be eligible for federal financial aid. So if they do happen to hit decline, or a parent happens to hit decline, they will be met with this dialog box here and given another opportunity to say approve. Or if you continue with decline, you can still submit the application, but it's going to kind of go, or it's kind of going to get you nothing because it's going to be tied directly to federal financial aid. You can, however, go back in and change that answer to approve and then continue with the rest of the questions on the FAFSA. For demonstration, we're going to go ahead and hit approve. And we're going to see the website kind of thinking and going out to the IRS and bringing in the information to the FAFSA. You will see this ribbon here. You'll have one of two responses. The majority is going to be success, where there was some information found and brought back into the FAFSA. The other opportunity, or the other option for an answer, would be we were unable to locate any information. And in that case, the student or their contributors would be prompted to manually enter their information into the FAFSA. But because we have success here, that information was brought in, and we're going to go ahead and continue. We're going into the students section still. We're logged in as Raya. We'll always see this ribbon as we're logged in as Raya. We're still in the student portion of the form. We're going to go ahead and hit continue, gathering some more information about the student. So the majority of our incoming first-year students are going to be single. So that would be the option that we would select. And they're also going to be first-year students. So you'll see first year, second year, and then the more traditional naming for those, freshman, sophomore, and so on. We want to make sure that we're selecting first year. And then when the student renews in their second year, they would be selecting second year, and so on down the road. So when they file their FAFSA every year, they will be moving up, hopefully, a class year. And then if they attend graduate study, they would be selecting the graduate option. Our students are not coming in with a bachelor's degree. Many of them come in with almost or an associate's degree, but they're not coming in with a bachelor's degree. Go ahead and answer no to that question and hit continue to move forward. These next sets of questions are commonly referred to as the dependency questions, but now they've been rebranded as the personal circumstance questions. And these are determining a student's dependency status. Will they have to have parental information on the FAFSA or not? So these are not functional that we can click on them, but I will say if a student does have one of these circumstances and they do click on it, That will prompt some outreach from the campuses to request supporting documentation. So if there is one of these situations that's in play, we will want to make sure that the documentation is sent into the campuses when they request it so that that can be documented in the student's file. But for our purposes, we're going to say none apply and move forward. Also, this question has been on the FAFSA for many years now, asking about a student's homeless status or homelessness status, and that would be answered appropriately. Yes would be requiring some additional documentation sent into the campus, and no would just let us continue through the form without any supporting documentation. So for demonstration and ease purpose, we're just going to continue forward with answering that no. And this is the slide, or this is the portion of the FAFSA that talks about those unusual circumstances that I mentioned in the opening. And I think this is a pretty decent list of some of those unusual circumstances. There might be another one that your student may be experiencing. I'm not going to hit yes to this question because it forces me to go all the way back to the beginning of the prototype, and I just want to, again, be mindful of time. But if a student does have one of these circumstances, they can answer yes to this question, and it will make them what's called provisionally independent, which means they will be temporarily deemed independent and get them through the rest of the form without including parental information on the FAFSA. And it will, again, prompt some outreach from the campus to get a little bit more information and kind of talk about what documentation will be needed in order to support that claim of independence. And then students can answer no to this question and will not have any further documentation needed and will continue forward. Again, this ribbon is saying that the student is being deemed a dependent student. And if this was answered yes, it would say you're a provisionally independent student. So for this purpose, we're dependent and moving forward. This question here is for students whose parents may not be willing to put their information on the FAFSA. Students can have access to a direct unsubsidized loan in these cases, but they would not be eligible for any other, like a federal Pell Grant or federal work study through the FAFSA application. But if this question is answered incorrectly, because it's been reworded, thankfully, but it might be answered incorrectly by a student, but they can go back in and change that later if they answer it incorrectly. But for our purpose, we'll say no and hit continue. Now we're still in the student side of things and shifting towards some demographic information. These first couple of questions are not going to affect aid eligibility in any way, but the Department of Ed is collecting statistics on FAFSA applicants. So we'll just answer these two questions accordingly and get into the rest of the application. We're getting into the citizenship status, answering that question accordingly. If answering the eligible non-citizen, the additional step there would be to put the student's A number in there. The citizen question does not have that additional step. So we'll go ahead and hit continue. Asking about parents' educational or education status, and we'll say one or both parents completed college. Just mark whatever appropriate answer is for that particular question. And answering if they have a parent or guardian that was killed in the line of duty as a result of the events of September 11th, or if they were performing public safety officer duties, they would answer this question appropriately as well. And for our purpose, we'll say no. Students' high school completion status has 4 options, and we would ask that they select the most appropriate response, which is probably going to be high school diploma. Many of our students in past cycles have answered this question with none of the above, because I think they're thinking in the moment that they are completing the FAFSA, I don't have any of these things yet. So they're saying none of the above. And that's going to, again, prompt some outreach from the campuses to get some better idea of what their high school completion status is. But looking at the question is, what will their status be when they begin college? Again, the majority of our kids are going to have the high school diploma. And now we've got to locate our high school. So again, this is not fully functional, but we will be able to demonstrate the functionality of this particular section of the FAFSA. We're going to go ahead and select New York. We're going to select Binghamton. Hello to my Binghamton partners that might be listening. And we're going to go ahead and hit search in just a minute. But to make this process a little bit easier, because every high school or most every high school has the word school in it. So I would not recommend putting school in the search button here. I would maybe put as many of the other names of the school in there as possible to help narrow it down. Because if you just put, city school or arts school, you might come up with way more options than you want. And rather than going page by page through the different options, put as many of the school sub names in this search, so it just helps you narrow it down even more. We're just going to go ahead for Binghamton, hit search. And for this functionality, it's only coming up with one school. So that makes it a little bit easier. But for some of our downstate and city partners, you may have a much more larger list to go through. So we want to make sure that you're making good use of time and effort in trying to find the high school. Go ahead and select that and hit continue. And then it's just going to give you an opportunity to review and confirm, and we'll move forward. So now we're we did all the demographic side in these early pieces, and now we're going to switch more to the finances. And if you remember in the consent and approval process, the majority of the income questions have been answered through that consent and approval process. And this part here is not a function of the prototype, but this kind of goes over what I was saying earlier. If there was a change in income or a change in family dynamics, perhaps of a divorce separation situation, you would still answer the questions based on 2024, that base year. But if there was a situation where a joint tax return came in as a result of the direct data exchange, that consent and approval process, you might have to contact the financial aid office and submit some additional documents for them to separate out the parent of record information on the FAFSA. So that's for further down the cycle and a little bit more in depth than what we're doing today. I just, again, wanted you to be aware of that concept. So we had a successful consent and approval direct data exchange with the IRS. So we're only being asked a few extra questions. And you will see up here, if the answer is 0 or doesn't apply, please enter 0. Not leaving any of these questions blank. We don't want to have any hiccups with the process of the application. So if it's a 0, we're putting a 0. And I feel pretty confident that these ones are going to be 0 anyway because they're the student. They're not going to have any rollovers from IRAs or pensions, and they're not going to have any foreign exclusion income, and they're not going to have any taxable scholarships. We had seen in prior cycles, both on the student side of things and on the parent side of things, they were putting their students' presidential scholarship in here, their Pell Grant in here, their TAP award in here, and those are not taxable. So I would feel pretty confident that these 4 questions are going to be 0 for our students. So we'll go ahead and move forward. These ones also may be all 0s for our students. It's asking for cash savings and checking for the student, any net value of investments, and owning a business or a farm. So we're going to say that Raya has $1,500 in her savings account. She doesn't have any investments or real estate, and she doesn't own a business or a farm with more than 100 employees. Again, we're going to hit continue. And getting to probably the part that has the most data entry. So as I said, the studentaid.gov account is going to bring in the demographic information. That IRS consent and approval direct data exchange is going to bring in the majority of the income information. And now we're going to get to the stage of entering the colleges that we want to receive the student information on the FAFSA. So a new thing last year, or with FAFSA simplification, you can list up to 20 schools on the FAFSA, and you can select by state, by name, or if you happen to know the school code, you can flip over to that and enter the school code data there. But we're going to demonstrate the functionality of searching by state, and we're going to go ahead and select New York again. And this could be applicable to your students, or if they're looking out of state, they can do the same thing with the out-of-state campuses. I'm going to go ahead and just select Ashland because I don't think there's any New York cities listed in there. And very similar to the high school side, if there's a unique name or a unique part of your students' college names, you'd want to put that in the search because most of them have college or university as part of their name, and that's not going to really pare down what you're wanting to look at. So looking, for example, Carnegie Mellon, I would put in Mellon to kind of just help ease that search a little bit. But for our purposes here, I'm going to select Hamilton. Good morning to any folks from Hamilton listening this morning. You're going to get a list. If you select by just one campus, but if they have multiple campuses with like Hamilton in them or say Buffalo in them, you want to make sure that you're selecting the correct one. But you're going to get either one result or multiple results. But this is just to demonstrate how easy it is to select. You just hit select and it'll keep a count for you. As I said, there's 20 options and you're just selecting as few or as many as you would like. So in this case, we're just going to select 4. You can either go back and select more or go forward. Even after the FAFSA has been processed, students can still log back into their FAFSA and make an edit to either take away some campuses or add some more. So it doesn't only need to be done in this situation or in this screen here. We're going to get a list of the schools that we added. You can either remove them or view more information from them. Sometimes it's helpful for families to see, cost information, graduation rate, retention information. That's helpful for students and families as they are possibly in the beginning stages of narrowing down their campuses. So we'll go ahead and hit continue here. Now we're at the stage of inviting parent or parents to the FAFSA. So I just wanted to draw your attention to this link here. It's very similar to what we saw earlier in the onboarding process, but it's a wizard that students can use if they're unsure about how many parent contributors are going to be on the FAFSA. And Danielle, can you confirm that this is visible for our participants, please?
Yes, we're looking at the screen that asks who is considered a legal parent.
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
Yep.
So just for ease and speed, we're going to just first demonstrate a 2-parent household. So we've got mom and dad, and we're going to hit continue. So it says legal parents are mom and dad. Mom and dad married to each other. Yes. Both mom and dad are on the FAFSA. So if they're not married, mom and dad live together? Yes. And mom and dad? No. Then who provided more financial support in the prior 12 months? Mom? Mom remarry? No. Then only mom is on the FAFSA. So I wanted to quickly demonstrate this for you, that is built in to help students better understand who is going to be on the FAFSA. As you can see, it's tied to marital status and it's also tied to tax filing status. So that's a helpful tool built into the FAFSA, which I wanted to demonstrate for you. So we'll go back, and Danielle, can you confirm that we're back on our contributor page?
Yes, we are.
Thank you. I always worry about that. We'll go ahead and hit continue. We're going to invite Raya's mom to participate in her FAFSA. And for folks that are on the meeting this morning who joined us last year, remember that there were multiple items that a student would have to key in order to invite their parent contributor to the FAFSA. What's only been reduced down now to the email address. So we're going to say momcollege@gmail.com. And then we're going to hit send invite, and we're going to get a confirmation that this is mom's email address. And we're going to go ahead and send that invite. And we see the notification that the invite has been sent, and we're going to go ahead forward. So now we get to review the information that we've provided, and in the interest of time, we're not going to do that, but I do want to just say that is a good rule of thumb to open up these carets on the side to review the information that was provided. They're all hot links that will take you back to that section to make any edits if you need to, or if the student needs to, and this is both on the student side and the parent side, and my hope is that we're going to get to the parent side in a couple of minutes. We'll see that we have shared with one contributor, and this code here is also new. This will be something that is provided to the parent in that email. They'll have the link to accept the invitation, as well as this code that will be data entered when they do accept the invitation on that home screen that we saw early on. We'll go ahead and hit continue. And now we're at the, completion of the student side of things. So again, this is a bunch of, legal language here that says that the student provided accurate information to the best of their knowledge. It's all truthful and under penalties of possibly fine, providing incorrect information or untruthful information. So the student is going to sign their section. As you see down here, the student is only given the option to sign the application because we've invited the parents and they haven't done their part yet. So as I mentioned earlier, the FAFSA will not be considered fully completed and submitted until all contributors have done their part, and then it will be processed. So in this case, as Raya, we're only signing our section. And the messaging will be accordingly that it's pending submission because we're waiting for the parent contributor to do their part. So that was the quick overview of the student side of things. Danielle, were there any questions that we wanted to look at live before I switched over to the parent side of things?
Yes, we do have a handful of questions. So we're asking for some clarification on homelessness. Does this include living in a shelter with their family?
I have little to no experience with this question. I will be completely honest. So
Cool, I got it.
I will rely upon my school partners that have a little bit more experience on this question.
Definitely. So I'm fully sitting on the studentaid.gov website right now, and homelessness for the purposes of this question is referring to students who are unaccompanied, meaning they're not physically living with their parents. So if the family is living in the shelter with the student, they are not considered homeless for the purposes of this question. Okay, let's see. There's a question about, is work-study income included on the FAFSA?
My experience with this is if the student filed a tax return, if they were required to file a tax return in the base year, then that would be income that would be claimed there and as part of that direct data exchange consent and approval process. If a student was not required to file a tax return and they answer that accordingly on the FAFSA, they're not going to be asked about how much they earned from work. That was my understanding. I would call upon my school partners to either correct me or expand on that a little bit. And then schools also have a process of reporting federal work study as well. So has historically been on the FAFSA, prior in other cycles. But to my knowledge, it would not be a specific question on the FAFSA simplification process.
So just to add to what you're saying, Renee, so work-study income may be taxable for the student, but it is not counted as income on the FAFSA form. So they will exclude, even though they may have filed taxes on it, it can be excluded on the FAFSA form.
That's a great point. I always forget that piece.
Let's see. I scrolled and I lost my spot. Someone was asking, what are the other ways to send an invitation to a parent? I had to look this one up, you guys. So, in the situation where the parent, the contributor rather, doesn't have a social security number, they'll be asked to provide the mailing address as well as the email address for that parent. And then federal student aid will reach out to that parent directly to get that information. I believe that is what it's referring to when it says other ways to send an invite. Do you know if two parents can use one email address?
No, I don't think that has changed us in this studentaid.gov world. That because that is tied directly to a social security number, date of birth for a user, they would need to be distinctive different email addresses. If it came down that a student had two parent contributors versus just one, but even a student and a parent couldn't use the same email address, the process would stop you and have you put in a unique email address.
Cool. just two more questions and then we'll keep going on to the next section. Is the TAP application linked on the FAFSA this year?
No. Well, no, in the sense, and Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong. It's you would have a link to come into the to the TAP application, but you would have to fully data enter your information in from that. It would not pre-fill in like it had in prior cycles. So you would be coming into a blank application and data entering that information.
Yep, Renee, that's correct. There's no API still this year, so there's no transfer of FAFSA data on linking. There's a link, brings you to a landing page. We'll talk about that when we do my session, but yeah, you're 100% right.
And then the last one that we're going to answer live right now is, do you recommend that the student complete their part of the FAFSA before the parent?
That has always been my recommendation, simply because when FAFSA simplification was first born a couple of years ago, we, at least with the families that I was helping, when a parent would start it and the student would come in second, it seemed to like forget signatures, and it seemed that there was a lot of going back and forth providing signatures. So it just seems to flow better when the student does their part in total, invites the parent, and then the parent comes in second and completes their part. I have, based on my own experience, I've just seen it flow a lot better and have a less challenges and hiccups with linking up both sections.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It tends to be slightly wonkier if you do it in the other direction. It theoretically is supposed to work, but
we want this process to be as smooth as possible, and it has smoothed out a lot over the last couple of years. You know, our first families through this process, I think, were the trailblazers, and they took on a lot of the burden of the new application, and the subsequent years have been smoother. Last year compared to the year before, way smoother, and I'm expecting the same for this coming year.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and just look at what this will look like when a parent is going in and accepting the invitation. We're going to go ahead with mom. This is just a sample of what the email would look like for mom, that, you know, Raya has started her form and can't complete it without mom's help. And this is the button to click on for accepting the invitation and then making note of the code that is there. So we're going to go ahead and hit accept the invitation. And again, that studentaid.gov account that was already previously set up by mom is already verified and in place. And we're going to go ahead and log in as mom. And then that invitation code automatically, I don't know if probably not for the functionality, the real functionality, but I don't have any data on that because I haven't seen it live, only through the prototype. If that invitation code automatically pre-populates. Anybody that's helped with FAFSAs already thus far for 26-27, if you wanted to confirm that or not, I'm not sure if this was just only for the functionality of the prototype. But we're going to go ahead and hit submit because we have the invitation code. And then by accepting, you're agreeing to share your information. We'll hit accept. And this is the exact same landing pages that we saw on the student side of things, on the parent side of things. So we'll go ahead and hit continue. Exact same onboarding, the exact same screens. So we're going to go through these pretty quickly. Same experience as it was on the student side of things. Now, if you were to take out all of the, me talking through each of these stages, we've only probably spent about 10 minutes on the FAFSA thus far. So, I mean, you can see, for those of you who have, historical experience with the old FAFSA that had over 100 questions on it, we would probably be in the student demographic page still as it relates to the old FAFSA. So this exactly the same, or, only with the parent information coming in with what they use to set up their studentaid.gov account with, and we'll go ahead and hit continue. And right out of the gate too is providing the consent and approval here on the parent side of things. It's the same functionality, same legal language to review if they so choose to do so. And that if we hit decline, it's going to give them a further pop-up saying that consent and approval is directly tied to federal aid eligibility. And are you sure that that's what you want to do? So in this case, we're going to go ahead and approve. And we'll see the cooking behind the scenes. And we'll also notate that we've switched over this ribbon up here saying we're now the parent. So we saw it before when we were logged in as Raya. We saw just Raya's name up here, but now it says parent of Raya Tran. So it can kind of be a good rule of thumb to be like, am I on the student side or am I on my side? Because sometimes when you're doing this form, you kind of lose track and get hyper-focused on one thing. You want to make sure that you're in the right section. We did get the success here. As I mentioned earlier, success is one option, or we weren't able to locate your information is another option. But luckily, we got the success here and can go ahead and hit continue. Again, very similar to what we had on the other side. On the student side of things, student options were the same. The parent options are the same. We're going to say married. We're going to come through to the state of residence, very similar. We're going to select New York. And if the parent has been a resident since they were born, they would just put their month and year in here. If they became a resident after they were born, they would just put the appropriate month and year in there. And the same landing page for those special financial circumstances that we talked about earlier, but still the FAFSA right out of the gate is going to have the correct base year information, so that 2024 tax data. So these questions here were not on the student side of things, asking if the parents or anyone in the household had any of these federal benefits. And if they do apply, you would want to hit a corresponding box. These are not functional in the prototype, so I'm not going to be able to demonstrate those for you. But if those are applicable to your students and families, you would select those accordingly. But for our purposes, we're just going to say none apply and move forward. So the family size is coming in also from the IRS, that consent and approval direct data exchange. So in Raya's case, she's an only child and she has two parents. So the family size is 3, and that came through as a result of the tax return and that direct data exchange. But say, for example, she had another sibling that was not claimed by their parent, but lived in the household and was supported by the parents, then they would have an opportunity to update manually the family size. But in this case, because it's matching, it says, is the family size different? We'll say no, and then we'll go ahead and move forward. Also asking for the number of college students that will be attending in this upcoming academic year. And because, like I said, Raya is an only child, she will be the only student attending college. The same display of questions is here because we had a successful IRS data exchange. So there's only a handful of questions that are going to be coming through. Some of these questions may be applicable to families. Some of them may not be. So we just encourage reading through the questions carefully and answer them accordingly. So we'll say that a pension rollover or an IRA rollover is not in play here, as well as no taxable scholarships or grants as it relates to the parent, and they don't have any foreign income exclusion, but they might want to just take a quick peek at line 8B of their federal tax return to confirm that. Any child support in play? There is none in play in this case. However, if there were, you would just put the whole dollar amount here. Any cash savings checking that's applicable to the parent will say $5,000 in their checking account. They don't have any investments or real estate, and they don't own a business or a farm. If these are all zeros, then that's what's going to be the answer to those questions as the prompt, not to skip any questions or leave any questions blank. If the answer is 0, we will be data entering 0. So we would invite the parent's spouse to this form. If myself as mom and dad filed a joint tax return, we would still only be one contributor. But They do want to have the spouse invited as a contributor for record keeping purposes. They won't be providing their signature or anything, but they will just be part of the application. So we'll go ahead and move forward. So just like on the student side of things, you have the opportunity to review these pieces to make sure that the information is correct. Hot links over here to go back to the section to make those changes if needed. And then we'll go ahead and hit continue. We can see that dad has been sent an invitation to just confirm his piece of it, but he won't be required to sign. So I remember when I was practicing this one behaved a little bit funny. So hopefully it doesn't begin funny here. This is showing that, the parent can sign again because we have a potential third person that has some information to provide. Raya's FAFSA is still going to be in a pending state. So we can go ahead and hit sign. Now stop. This is what it was doing when I was practicing. Okay. Bear with me. I apologize for this. I probably should have skipped this one. There we go. Now it's saying the parent section is complete, but once dad does provide the little bit of information that he would have put on the FAFSA, then he would sign and submit the whole thing. That would be his option there. Again, in the interest of time, I just wanted to take the opportunity as I'm closing out my section here. We will have opportunities for more questions and answers at the end. I know Mike has a lot of good information to share on the TAP application as well. But as I close out my section, I just want to thank you again for attending and for supporting our students and families across New York, and want to leave you with some quick tips. Quick tips. So students, if they can please use their personal email address for the college process, if they haven't already gotten one set up for that. Once they graduate high school, they're not going to have access to their high school email address anymore. And that's the main way that FSA, the Federal Student Aid, HESC, our organization, and campuses reach out to students is through their email. So we want to make sure that you've got a good email that you're checking regularly. Getting that studentaid.gov account set up at least a week to 10 days prior to sitting down and doing the FAFSA. And then setting aside at least an hour of quiet time to do both of these applications. No distractions, no, TV playing in the background, as best as you can. I know that time is spent with activities and dinner preps and everything. We just want to try to encourage, if you can, to sit down, set aside an hour of quiet time to get both of these applications completed. Take your time, read the questions carefully. I was trying to point out some along the way that have been misanswered in the past. They have been reworded in some cases too, but we want to make sure that students and families are reading these questions carefully and providing the correct answers, and not guessing on any answers or skipping any questions, because that could cause some delays in the applications being processed. And we certainly don't want to have any delays with any financial aid offers sent out later this year and beginning into 2026, because you're going to start getting those in a variety of forms, whether that's electronic or paper. We don't want any delay with those financial aid offers coming through, so that when it comes time to make an enrollment decision, you got everything in front of you to make that decision. Having your documents ready, those 2024 tax documents, that's pretty big. Having the legal name, date of birth, and social security number correct on all your forms, because those three things need to be correct. Those three things go to other agencies behind the scenes to confirm things, and we want to make sure at the very, very least, those three items are correct. Parent marital status and tax filing status, wanting to make sure that those are correct, because that could also cause some delays down the road. Checking email regularly, responding to inquiries in a timely way, asking questions in a timely way. All of that kind of goes back to just making this experience as stress-free as possible. You're going to have questions. So and we potentially could have questions too. So making sure that you're responding in a timely way and asking in a timely way. And the final thing is you're filing your FAFSA and TAP applications every single year. So it's not just a one and done thing. That would be lovely, but that's not a thing just yet. So you're going to be redoing this application or these applications every October. And if you got younger students in the pipeline, October is going to kind of be your rule of thumb, is when the earliest that you can get these forms completed. So unless there are other things burning that we need to address now, I can turn it over to Mike Turner to share STEP.
There are just a couple of questions that I'd like to answer just in case anyone is leaving for the state portion. There are a lot of questions surrounding parents who live outside of the United States and providing their information on the FAFSA application. According to studentaid.gov, if a parent lives and files taxes in a foreign country and they don't file a US tax return, they'll need to provide consent on the FAFSA and approval, and they must convert the amounts of their foreign tax information into US dollars and submit it manually on the form. But if the parent lives in and files taxes with a US territory or freely associated state, then they can fill out their section of the FAFSA normally. And if it's not letting them do that, they will contact the financial aid office at the college or school that they are applying to. Another question that's actually for Renee is that students who have parents who are incarcerated, are they able to fill out a paper FAFSA?
Any student applicant can do a paper FAFSA if the circumstances make it necessary to do so. So as part of our resources for attendees, we will have the FAFSA toolkit or FSA toolkit out there where you can download a copy of the PDF paper application because there's some circumstances that is needed, but just kind of be aware that filing a paper FAFSA takes a longer period of time. And there may be a situation of, if depending on the full scope of the parent situation, that there may be a possibility of, a conversation about a dependency override. So that could be a further conversation with the campus that your student may be attending, to kind of help smooth through that process where it's only the student information on the FAFSA. But the paper application is available to any applicant that is needing one, but just understanding that it's going to take longer for it to process, and the ability to make corrections may be a little bit more challenging as well. I think, there was fewer than 1% or around 1% of FAFSAs filed in the last cycle were filed via paper. So that would be, again, an opportunity or an option for any FAFSA applicant.
Correct. And if you do have a parent that is incarcerated or the student is incarcerated, that is an option on the FAFSA. If you have an unusual circumstance, you can select that and it will allow you to submit the electronic FAFSA without that information. And then you will need to reach out directly to the schools that you are applying to for further instructions. The very last one that we're going to go over is someone felt that the information about, sorry, my cat just ran into the door, about parents without socials was answered really quickly. Can we revisit that?
Were those questions that were in the Q&A box? Danielle, I didn't see those.
I think they were just in general, what should you do when your parent doesn't have a social on the FAFSA?
That is an option on the FAFSA, that if a parent doesn't have a social security number, there is a different pathway that they would go down to confirm their identity, and they would still be able to get through that studentaid.gov setup and still be able to be a participant on the FAFSA as a contributor. So there's just a different pathway that they would go through to confirm their identity if they don't have a social security number.
Awesome, thank you. That's all I have for now. We will continue answering any of the questions in the Q&A as Mike starts his section. But thanks, Renee.
All right. Danielle, can you hear me okay? Just switching to a different mic.
Sure can.
All right, perfect. So I just wanted to again promo our event, but also we got a lot of questions about the upcoming first ever college access conference sponsored by HESC in Albany. We're having a number of issues with different state agencies actually are having a number of issues with some of their web pages right now, and you know, due to the great timing of things, failing, this page is included. So anybody who's trying to get to the hesc.ny.gov/NYSCAC landing page to learn more about our event, you may encounter web page errors. We apologize for the inconvenience and are trying to get IT support resources to get our page back up. Someone else in the Q&A had also pointed out that some of our other partner pages are also not functioning at this time. So, thanks again for those people who pointed that out in the last hour, because we do have people on it and we hope to have the pages back up soon. So again, we want to make sure that people are aware of this event and that you come out to the site and learn more. So if the link is not working for you right now, please be sure to try it a little bit later in the day. And you could learn more about that opportunity to join our conference. So I'm just going to switch my share over. What we're going to do is actually look at a live demo of the TAP application, which is something we haven't done in previous years. Just to reintroduce myself, my name is Mike Turner. I'm the Associate Director of Grant and Scholarships here at HESC. And so we're excited to provide information about our New York State Student Aid Payment Application, which is the gateway to apply for TAP and other New York State student aid programs. So many of our applicants are not only just applying for TAP, but they're looking for programs like the Excelsior Scholarship, the Enhanced Tuition Award. Our state scholarships, like the Scholarship for Academic Excellence, require this application. So it is a really important application step for students if they are trying to get any money from New York State from our various grant and scholarship programs to help them pay for college here in New York. There were a number of questions in the Q&A, and this came up again with Renee's Q&A live about the availability of the TAP application at the end of FAFSA. So right now there is a link that will be on the FAFSA confirmation page that will drive users to this web page, which is our TAP landing page, hesc.ny.gov/NYS TAP. But it's not the same experience for some of you who are on the call today or on the webinar have had in the past, where they get a pre-populated application, it carries over their data, makes the account creation process go a lot quicker. That's something called the API that they're still not offering. They stopped that in 24-25 cycle, and they haven't reinstated it yet, although we're getting close. There were some talks from the U.S. Department of Education about reinstating the API process that would allow us that seamless linking process. But for now, students are going to be still given a link, and it's going to bring them to this particular landing page so they could then apply for TAP. So this is truly what we call an anytime TAP on the web application, meaning that students can still file this independent of the FAFSA. But the stakes are a little bit raised, because when they are doing this independent of the FAFSA and there's no longer that connection, it's going to be really, really important for the students to get their information correct. So we're going to go through the account creation process and the application process. But, before, where we had that transfer of data, students, it helped prevent some of the data entry errors that we are seeing now with this new process that started a couple cycles ago. And so it's going to be really important for students to provide their correct personal identifying information, their PII, to make sure that things match up between their state application and their federal. So this is our landing page for TAP. It gives them some information, and underneath we have our deadlines and openings, and they could then apply through FAFSA or just apply for TAP. When they click these links, it's going to bring them to our tried and true TAP application. I'll zoom in on this so you can see it a little bit bigger. So we have our instructions here. We also give some guidance about students who may not be looking to apply for this pathway.
The particular pathway that we're talking about today is what we call at HES the traditional TAP application pathway. It's a pathway that's FAFSA contingent, meaning that while they don't need to have had a FAFSA file to access this application and to submit it, a FAFSA will eventually be required, a completed application will be required in order to process this TAP application. So it's going to be important that if students are accessing the TAP application independent of FAFSA, that they do eventually follow through and complete a FAFSA all the way through processing with an SAI calculated. If students, start and save their FAFSA or have incomplete FAFSAs that are rejected for various reasons, most commonly we have the provisional independent or some of those other dependency model errors where students answered the unsubsidized loan question incorrectly. There's one status that's called a rejected dependent status. So if, in layman's terms, if their FAFSA is screwed up, then they may have submitted this TAP application correctly, but it's not going to go anywhere until those FAFSA errors are resolved. So it's going to be really important that they see that through. Now, if this is the student who's trying to complete this TAP application is not someone who's going to be able to file a FAFSA or see a FAFSA through full processing, they may be looking at or interested in pursuing one of our other pathways of applying. So, for example, for students who may be without lawful status and may not have social security numbers, they're not going to be able to submit a FAFSA. But we have our DREAM Act pathway for students who meet the DREAM Act qualifications. We may also have students who are opting out of FAFSA due to privacy concerns and other reasons, personal reasons why they do not want to complete a FAFSA application. Although they may be a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, they may have a social security number, they may want to use our alternative pathway to applying. So we have held and will be holding different webinars to train on those different pathways. So we're not going to focus on that for today's session because our time is very limited. We are going to be focused in this demonstration on the traditional TAP application pathway, which is FAFSA dependent. So I just wanted to make sure that that's clearly indicated. All right, so we click start our application and we're brought to our HESPIN authentication page, which is where returning users, if you're a continuing student, you've applied for TAP before, you would just, dig up your username and PIN and you would log in. But we're going to go through this experience as a first-time registrant, somebody who's never applied before. I'm a brand new, incoming college student, maybe a high school senior right now. And this is my first time doing anything with HESC and applying for TAP. So we're going to click the first-time users link. We're going to have some steps here and outline on what are the steps to create an account. It's pretty simple. We just go next. And then we have our terms and conditions. So there are terms and conditions for using our site. The student will hopefully read all of these terms and conditions, privacy notice, our disclaimers, use of information, and say, yep, that's fine with me, and click next. They check the box and next. So now here's where I was talking about stakes being raised. We get a lot of inquiries from high school counselors and college financial aid professionals asking about the status of TAP applications and saying, they're working with a student who swears they applied for TAP months ago and we're still showing that there's no application completed for them. 9 out of 10 times it boils down to this one page right here, which is, did the student provide us and will they be providing us correct personal identifying information, the right SSN, the right date of birth, the right name that will match to their FAFSA application to result in successful processing of the TAP application that they're going to file behind this account login. So really, really important. So if I don't have my social security number committed to memory, maybe it'd be a good thing for me to have it written down so I could refer back to it. Again, we don't have the API, so this is not pre-populated. This is totally up to our applicant. The other thing to note here is that if you're working with a parent who's trying to file this application on behalf of a student, the account needs to be created for the student, not as the parent. So one of those other application errors where we get questions about where's the TAP app, what happened to it, we sometimes find out that the parent filed the TAP application as if they were the student. Mom created the account with her SSN, her date of birth, her name, and then when they get into the TAP app, they notice, oops, why does this have my name? I'm going to change the name from my name to my child's name. That's not going to result in a successful TAP application being processed because, again, behind the scenes, the SSN, the date of birth, and name that we're trying to match is going to be the person who created this account to file the application. So this needs to be the student. So we're going to put in our student's SSN. And our date of birth. Date of birth is another thing we get a lot of inquiries about. It has to match the FAFSA. So FAFSA actually lets you kind of skate by with a plus or minus margin of error. So if you don't know your date of birth, but you think you're close, like, oh, I think it's January 1st, but it might be the 2nd, or maybe you're an older adult student who doesn't want to show you were born in 64. You want to say, it's actually 68. FAFSA can let you skate with that. But if you then complete your TAP application with your correct real date of birth, then it may not sync. So sometimes we're answering questions about status of TAP application, and we could see a disparity between the date of birth that was used to file our application and what the student used to file their TAP app. So sometimes we can correct the HESC account with the correct date of birth, but many times it's the FAFSA that needs to be corrected and resubmitted with the proper date of birth for the student to then allow it to match up to this TAP application that we're going to be submitting. All right, we're going to be filing as Jackson Dart, who has a very important Sunday coming up, and we'll just throw in our Albany address here for the HESC headquarters. And then we'll just throw in a phone number. So you could have landline, you could have mobile. One of the two are required. You don't need both. All right, so we have our user information here. We're going to look at this. Everything looks good. My name looks good. My birthday looks good. If I need to go back, I can go back and edit. But if everything looks good here and I'm actually reviewing and making sure it looks good, then we can go forward. So next in account creation, we ask for New York State ID. It's optional. So it says right here, if you do not have a New York State ID, you could skip. So, again, we get questions from counselors, people panicking. People will say in the chat or in the Q&A, well, does the student have to have a New York State ID in order to apply for TAP? The answer is 100% no. It's optional. If they do have one, it helps us verify their identity. So this could be any kind of ID card issued by the New York State DMV, which would be driver's license, permit, or non-driver's license ID. It cannot be anything else from any other ID from another authority. So if it's their New York City ID, if it's municipal ID, if it's their high school ID, they should not be using it. It should only be a DMV issued credential. If they have it, if they don't, it's fine. They could skip, and that's what we're going to do in this instance. So now here we have our email entry where the student's going to be putting their emails in case they lock out their account, and the email that we're going to be using to primarily communicate with them. So we're just going to throw in a test email here. Second email is optional. Maybe the parent wants to be put their email as a second email. Again, both emails could be used to help reset the account. So second email is not required, but it could be helpful if there's we sometimes get account reset questions where somebody says, "Oh, hey, I no longer have access to that Gmail account that I used to register for my HESC account. Can I change my email?" So that's where a second email may be good to have here, because if you do forget your password for your Gmail or you lock out your Gmail account, you can have that second email, parent email, someone else can help you get into your account, and then you can change your email from there. So we're just going to put in our challenge question in case we have to ever do a PIN reset. We're going to consent to communications, electronic communications, meaning that someone who's applying electronically, we're going to primarily communicate with them electronically. So if there's updates about their application status, if something is missing, if they're awarded, if they're denied, all of it is going to be through email communication. We would not be sending paper letters to students who have consented to email communications and who've made online HESPIN accounts. So now we have a secondary contact information. Again, it's an optional area, so we could put a parent for this. We could put, a guardian or someone we want to be our second contact. It's not required, so just for time purposes, we're going to skip. And now we create our user ID. So our user ID is going to be the username that we're basically using to log in to apply for TAP. And we're going to need this every year because TAP is an application that must be renewed every year, like FAFSA. So it's going to be an important credential to create and keep in a safe place, so that way we can access it in a future year. So let's do Big Blue 2025, and we'll make that our user ID, and we'll go next. Instead of a password, we actually have students or our account users create a 4-digit secret PIN. There are parameters around what they can use as their PIN number, so they can't use their 1234 or 999 or 111. And it cannot use their date of birth because some people will do that, right? They'll say, oh, I was born on May 20th, so I'm going to put 0520. So we don't allow that. So if they do have, if they are putting in a number and they're getting an error, it could be that they're not meeting one of the parameters here on the restrictions of what they can use as their PIN. So again, we'll just use our, we'll use a number. Sometimes when I'm working with students and we're doing these accounts, I say, hey, is there a code that you use to lock your phone? Maybe use those first 4 digits. Or, if they have, a favorite 4-digit number, maybe it could be a parent's month and year of date of birth, something like that. Again, they should keep it in a secure place for future use. So this is optional. Emails or notification security event. And this is just for state emergency emails. They could choose to receive them. They could choose to decline. We'll say, yeah, we want to know if there's kind of stuff going on in the state. And here we have our user ID, and we have the option to sign up to be an organ donor. So this is part of a law that was recently passed in New York State, where through different state agency applications, we do have to ask if the applicant is interested in donating their organs. So we're going to say no, I don't want to do that. And here we go. We have right now, we'll get an email address, email sent to our email address that says we've completed our account, and we can go next, and we're done with account creation once we've accepted our privacy notice. So this is a new screen that you may have not seen in previous years if you help student create HESPIN accounts to apply for TAP. But it is a new requirement in our disclosures and in our affirmations and consent. So students do have to read this about the use and storage of their information, agree to our privacy policy by checking the box and clicking continue. So we're through account creation, and now we're into the first page of the application. Now, I'm not sure if this was mentioned earlier, but we still have 2 active application years right now, right? We have our upcoming academic year, which is 26-27, but we also have the current academic year, 25-26, which are for students that are currently in college for this fall semester, or maybe if you have a December grad at your high school who wants to start college right away in the spring. So, it's helpful to make sure students know what the academic year is and what time period it covers so they complete the right application. Vast majority of your high school seniors are going to be completing for 26-27. But again, we do get that one-off kind of questions from schools. They're looking for a student's TAP application that hasn't processed. And we're telling the student via email, we have your TAP app, but not your FAFSA. The school's telling us we swear the student did their FAFSA, and we find out, yes, they did their FAFSA, but for 25-26. And that's not matching up to their 26-27 TAP app. So just be careful with those 2 active academic years. Make sure students are choosing the right one. So just a quick overview of completing the application and instructions about navigation. We're going to be using go back and continue buttons to be our primary method of navigation. We consent to disclosure and communication. Again, when students are completing this application, they're consenting to the use and sharing of their information with other state agencies for purposes of determining their award. So HESC is not using, we're not like, Apple or Amazon where we're using, saying you're consenting to disclosure of your information for sharing with third parties and for profit reasons. This is more for verification. So when students consent to this, they're going to be consenting that we will share their information with the New York State Department of Taxation and Finance for purposes of verifying their income. If they are claiming they're a foster youth, we share their information with the New York State Office of Children and Family Services to verify if they were in or currently are in foster care. So there's different state agencies that we communicate with and different means that we will use within those state agencies to make sure that the information being provided on our applications are correct. All right, so we're in Jackson's application. We can see the only things that have been pre-populated here are the data that we used to create our account. So we don't have address or anything in here yet. There's some questions that we need to answer, so we just can't simply continue. If students are skipping through required questions and they hit continue, they'll see these red arrows at the top that say you need to answer some questions here before we let you move forward. So we're going to see this throughout many of the pages, and we've actually beefed up our question requirements. It used to be before you could skip through a lot of sections of our application, and we were getting a lot of bare bones TAP applications that were missing parent info, income, and other pieces that were making students have to come back and have that second touch point with us in order to complete and update their application. We're really trying to minimize the touch points that students need to have to apply for state aid. So if they can give us all of the information upfront in the TAP application, it will reduce the likelihood that they need to come back and service their account and perform other updates due to incomplete applications. So we're just going to throw in our address again. And we have our email in here. That looks good. We have our date of birth. Now, you notice date of birth can't be changed. It's locked in. This is based on our account. So if right here I notice all of a sudden this is not my right date of birth, I should be aborting this process, just exiting out and going back through account editing to make sure that I could get that date of birth updated before I go through this application. Again, if I'm not reading, I'm just kind of skirting through this application and I don't notice this, that could be the critical error that results in my TAP application not being processed. The other thing I mentioned earlier is changing the names. Again, we have parents, they create the account, and then they'll say, wait a minute, no, this is not for Jackson. It's actually for Ronnie Dart. Jackson Dart's little known, brother who we don't know about. I don't know. But we can't do that because we built this whole account and the social security number behind the scenes is Jackson's, not Ronnie's. So if I'm manipulating the names and information on this screen and I submit this isn't going to be resulting in a processed application because we're not going to have a FAFSA for Ronnie Dart under Jackson's social security number or Jackson's date of birth. So again, the stakes are really important for students to get PII correct, for parents not to, make these sort of changes. So we're going to just go back to Jackson and everything looks good. So we go down here. Did we live in New York State for all of the 2025 calendar year? So if so, we can leave it as yes. If not, we say no, and it's going to say that we have these pop-ups to kind of let students know your answers may have some impacts on your eligibility. And we introduced these a couple years ago to try to stop students from making tab and clicking errors where they were just kind of blindly going through the app saying, oh, no, I'm not a resident, when they didn't really mean to say that. So this is sort of a second chance for them to review that question and say, oops, wait, I meant to put yes. But if they put no and it's really no, they can enter the month and year, in which case they started living in New York State. Our requirement is that students need to have lived in New York State, and if they're dependent, their parents, for at least 1 year prior to the start of the term that they want to receive TAP for in college. So if college starts at the end of August of 2026, they need to have lived in New York State for 12 months prior to that if there's somebody who just recently moved. We're just going to take our example here. We're going to just say that the student has been living in New York, keep it nice and easy. Now we're up to citizenship status. This is another area where it has to coincide with verified information from their FAFSA. So if I went through my FAFSA, I said I'm a US citizen, and that's been verified by the SSA, the student will progress through their application process and through processing without any errors. If the student is not verified as a US citizen or permanent resident, they can apply, but they'll have back-end processing errors where they'll be asked to provide supporting documentation to us that shows that they're a U.S. citizen or permanent resident. If the student indicates one of the other statuses that are not eligible for federal student aid, their application for TAP will be denied with messaging saying that they need to reapply through the DREAM Act. So if I'm saying I'm without lawful status and I'm going to submit this whole TAP application, I can do that, but it's not going to result in me being awarded. I'm going to get a message when it's processed and I'll log into my account and see the status that says I really need to be applying through the DREAM Act, and they're going to be redirected there. So we'll keep this nice and easy. U.S. citizen, we're not a veteran. And now we're up to our college screen. So on our college screen, depending on how far along the student is, if we already have a FAFSA for them and they're coming to the TAP application a little bit later in the process, there may be a college populated here. If they're early in the process and we don't have a FAFSA record for them yet, then the college may be blank as we see in this screen. So adding a college is really easy. We have our search button. We're going to click search, and we're basically going to search for the name of the college that we're interested in. The name of the college does not need to be super exact, on point, letter for letter, space for space for how the college's name is. You can do parcel searches. So, let's say I want to go to Baruch College. I could type bar and hit search. And any college that we have in our system with the letters BAR in it will show up. And, here's Baruch College for your undergrad. Maybe that's the one that I'm looking for. Let's say I'm just looking for CUNY schools. I'm not sure which one, but I just want to see all the CUNYs. I can type CUNY. I'm looking at SUNY schools. I'll type SUNY. So, if the school has that in their name, they'll show up in the search, and then we can go through and select the right schools. So sometimes we get questions from counselors and people saying, oh, we can't find the college's name on there. Some schools will reach out to us panicking, saying, oh, we're not listed on the TAP app. But you're there. It's just the name that the student's using to type in for you is not matching because they're using a longer name or a different spelling for your school. Let's say I just want to find Oswego, OSW. I'll just type that. There's Oswego. So very, very simple. I want to go to Oswego. I'm selecting I'm an undergrad, and then it says what semesters, what terms do I want to go to Oswego? I definitely don't want to start college in the summer after I graduate high school. I want to have a nice summer, so I'm going to say I want to go fall and spring. Continue. Let's say, again, the student arrives at this college screen at the time when there's a college already populated on here. If I don't want to list this college, I just want to delete it, I have two options. I could simply search and add a college to replace this, or I can click will not attend, which will remove the college, and then I could search all over again. So, oops, I don't want to go there. I really want to go to Hunter College. So I'll type Hunter. There's Hunter. I'll put that, fall, spring. And now I have Hunter College. So very easy. The only thing that becomes a point of confusion is the difference between the single college selection on the TAP app versus the multiple college listing on the FAFSA. So the question always is, well, I listed 20 colleges on my online FAFSA. Why can't I list 20 colleges on my TAP application? And the reason for the reason why they can only choose one is that we base the award amount and the type of formula that we use to calculate their eligibility. It's tied into the type of college that they're going to. Is it a 2-year community college? Is it a 4-year program? Is it CUNY? Is it SUNY? Is it private? So all of these colleges have profiles with us that determine what we can estimate. So if the student's not sure what college they want to go to at this point when they're on this screen, they can either leave the college that's on here for now, knowing that they could always come back and change it later, or list their first choice in New York State. What I usually say to students is close your eyes, imagine all your colleges in New York accept you. Which one of those colleges is your favorite that you would 100% go to over all others? You can list that college for now. And again, within our account servicing that students can come back to, they could easily change the name of their college if they don't go to the school or if they transfer terms, something like that. So now it's going to ask us, do we have our student ID number assigned to us by our college? Usually a lot of CUNY students already have their EMPL ID numbers when they apply for admission at CUNY. So maybe I can put that in there. But if I don't know it, or my college hasn't given me one, I could always check the box and just continue. So it's not required if they don't have it. So now we're asking about the student's marital status. This is also why reading is important within our application, because again, sometimes people are kind of just looking, glancing at our app and just saying, oh, it says married. It's asking if my parents are married. Yeah, they're married. They've been married since, 2000. And then they go ahead and they marry themselves to their father. I've literally seen students, sons marrying their moms, daughters married to their dads. It's really disturbing when you see it on the application. We don't want it. We just want to make sure that the student knows that, and it is correctable, but we do want to make sure the student knows that this is their marital status. If they're not married, they're a single student, they put single and they keep it moving. Now we're up to our dependency screen. So we want to know before we proceed and ask questions about this student's parents, do we have a student that may qualify of being independent? Now here the screen explains to the applicant, to the student, that there's some, qualifiers such as being foster care, ward of the court, or orphan that may qualify you to be independent and also for a certain level of TAP award. So here the student has a chance, the opportunity to declare that status. If I'm a student with a special circumstance who, and I just actually got a ping, an update that our NYS CAC site is back up and running. So if you want to get out there and check out that site, it should be up and running. So thanks for that update, team at HESC. So if I'm a student that wants to make a declaration of independence, let's say I'm an older adult student, I'm 30 years old, I don't live with my parents, I have my own life, my own apartment, my own job, I have my own kids, then I would just simply say, yes, I'm declaring I'm independent. Do I have kids? Yes, I'm 30 years old, I have a couple kids. No, I'm not in foster care, and I would proceed through to the next screen. If I'm a 17-year-old and I have a special circumstance, like I'm in foster care, or I have one of these special circumstances where my parents are not involved in my life, maybe I have a guardian like my grandma or somebody, then I would also want to say, yes, I'm declaring independence from my parents. Maybe I say, no, I don't have any kids, too young. And so then they would proceed through. And if they also happen to be a foster youth, they could say yes. Answering yes to the foster youth question will bring up this screen for our foster youth college success initiative landing page. So the state of New York provides some additional support, some funding to foster youth with helping with college expenses. And the student has the opportunity to complete that application by clicking this link. It'll redirect them to the application. It's not part of the TAP application, it's separate. But again, it is a resource for our foster youth, which is why we built this in to make sure that they are applying for all the available programs that the state has to give them. So I'm going to go back and we're going to say, actually, no, we're not a foster youth. Maybe we have another special circumstance that's going on where I can't apply with my parents. So when I click continue, the student's going to land on this financial independent status screen that's going to ask them, it's going to test to see, are they a student who could make a claim that they are financially independent from their parents? It's going to ask that student, were you or will you be claimed as a dependent on your parents' tax returns? Are you or will you be living with your parents in their place for at least more than 6 weeks this year or next? Are you or will you be receiving gifts or financial assistance from your parents worth more than $750 this year or next year? So if I'm a traditionally dependent student, I live with my parents, they pay all my bills, they claim me on their taxes as their dependent, these questions are usually all yes. Sometimes people will say no to the last two because they see the word gifts. They don't read the whole question. Again, people scan the app, they don't really read it. And they say, yeah, gifts. I never got anything $750 from my parents. They never bought me $1,000 watch or a phone or something like that. Maybe they did and they're not considering it a gift. If any of these are yes, like I have it all toggled yes, no, when the student goes through the application process, they're going to be considered a dependent student. If I want to have this student apply as independent because I know they have a special circumstance, they live with their grandparent, they don't live with their parents, these should all be toggled to no. Because again, we're asking about parents, not the uncle that they're staying with temporarily, or if you have a homeless unaccompanied youth that's staying at some relative's house. These should all be no. And if they say no to all these questions, they're going to be brought to a screen where they are asked about their special condition, aka special circumstance, that qualifies them to apply as an independent. So here they have some options. Are their parents totally permanently disabled, incompetent? They'll say no. Were they an orphan, foster youth? We already said no to that before. Am I receiving public assistance under my own budget? And that does not include food stamps, unemployment, or aid to families with dependent children, or WIC. So I'll say no. And then we have this last one, which is kind of our gray area blanket statement that covers all these kind of different special circumstances, which says, has your family been involuntarily dissolved, resulting in relinquishment of your parents' responsibility and control? So this is the one, like if, student, was born and raised that always, taken care of by their mom died, dad has never been in the picture, dad has been AWOL since the student was very young. They're not an orphan because both their parents are not deceased. But they have this situation now. They're staying with, an aunt or a grandma, and their mom has died. They don't know their dad, or their dad's, not involved. They could say yes to this. Both my parents are in jail. That's why I'm staying with relatives right now. That would be an involuntary dissolution. So anyone who chooses this pathway, they're going to get this status that's going to say you can go through as an independent. And you notice here on the left, our links have changed from asking about parent information to just going right into income and family members and going to the end. So all the parent information has been bypassed. But again, it's really contingent on me answering these questions correctly, because you can see if I say, yeah, I still live with my parents, I go boom right to my parents' information. So it doesn't matter that I said earlier I want to be considered independent from my parents. By way of me saying I still live with them, I'm going to be required to provide their information. And you notice here we have parent income added to our navigation. Those are going to be required screens. So I just answered this question from a college yesterday. They were like, oh, we're trying to get the student through as independent. It keeps asking for parent information. So I just simply sent them a quick write-up that said, make sure you're answering yes to this and no to all of these, and then you'll be able to go through the navigation for an independent student. And then they can go through. Now, if they submit as independent, they will be asked for supporting documentation that proves their independent status. So if they have that situation I mentioned before, mom passed away, they don't know dad, then we would want mom's death certificate and a letter from a school counselor or another person who's supporting the student that states that, to their knowledge, to their professional knowledge, the student doesn't have any contact with the father. The father's not on the contact card with the school, doesn't come to school meetings, or anything like that. And typically that would be fine for us to approve the student's claim of an involuntary dissolution. So that would be something that they would see after their application is processed. They would get an email saying your application was processed, but we're looking for additional information from you. They'd log into their account, see that messaging, and there would be an upload option where they can upload that supporting documentation. So we're going to go through this experience as a dependent student, just so I can demonstrate how the process goes the longer way for someone who's not claiming they're independent. They are supported, traditional dependent student, parents take care of everything. So now we're going to say, okay, you're a dependent student, and I want to, now you have to provide parent information. So we have this landing page that lets the student know it's transitional. It's saying, you are about to see screens that are going to ask about your parents. So again, we're trying to focus the student, focus the applicant to know what's coming up next is not about you, it's about your parents. So we're going to continue. It says parent marital status. What's my parent marital status? I have some options. So I look at my mom and dad. I say, what are you guys? You guys married, remarried? Are you guys separated, divorced? I look over at my mom and dad. I say, Dad, are you dead? And so my parents will give me their marital status. Let's say my parents are married. They've been married since January of 2000. And do my parents live in New York State? Again, important that students are not just accidentally tabbing through the app and skipping questions. Because if I say no to this and continue, I will be selected for a New York State residency review, because again, I'm applying as a dependent student who's saying I'm supported by my parents. And if my parents don't live in New York State, this application is going to question my residency, in which case I'd have to then be screened to see, do I meet the other pathways of being considered a New York State resident, despite my parents not living in New York State. So the law does permit, if the parents really do not live in New York State, but the student is or will be a New York State high school graduate who attended high school in New York for 2 or more years, We can't approve them through this process or through our alt pathway or DREAM Act if they meet that high school graduation requirement with 2 or more years attended here in New York State. So they would have to, that would be screened for them though, not through this application. It would be screened through the New York State residency review process as part of what we call an RFI, a request for information. So I'm going to say, yes, my parents live in New York. It's all good. We're all living in New York together. And now, did my parents file a New York State tax return? We did make a change to the screen this year. We've dummied down the options to your parents did not file a New York State return and the other option is they did file a New York State return. We used to ask our applicant to identify the specific form type that the parent was using. We used to say, did they do a IT 201 or did they do a IT 203? But what we learned painstakingly is that students were guessing which one their parents did. They weren't really looking through their parents' tax pages and putting the right one. And many students were guessing wrong and listing that their parents did an IT 203, which is a part-time resident, part-year resident tax return, which automatically selected the student for a residency review as soon as they submitted the application. So what we've done to eliminate the accidental residency review process by people guessing the wrong tax return type for their parents, we simply say, tell us yes or no, did they file a New York return? And what we will do is through our income verification process, we will send them to New York State Department of Tax and Finance, and we will find out directly from Tax and Finance if they did file a New York State return, and if they did file one, what type was it? Was it an IT 201 or 203? So if we learn the parents did a 201, they won't fall into a residency review. We'll know for sure that it's not because of how the parents filed their taxes. But if we learn through that income verification program that the parents did file a 203, then after IVP is completed, they will fall into an RFI, or request for information, for residency, because we'll say, hey, you said your parents are living in New York, but we're seeing that they're filing a part-year resident tax return. And so they'll have to clear that conflict of information through the New York State residency review questionnaire process. So here we're going to say, yes, my parents, they live in New York. They filed New York taxes, nice and easy. I don't even have to look at anything, and we can go through. So now we have our parent information screen where we're going to be looking for the information for these two parents. And we have a red message here that reminds students that because you said your parents filed taxes, you should be providing socials or ITINs for each parent. We do get some students, their parents have ITINs, but for whatever reason, students will click the my parent does not have a SSN or ITIN box. But on a previous screen, they said their parents filed. They will never clear income verification if they say my parents filed taxes, but they don't have a social or ITIN, because, you know, logically, if you filed a tax return, you needed a number to do it, right? You needed either an SSN or ITIN. So we would want that ITIN, if the parent has one, to fill it out in here so we could use it to verify their income. So we want to know, okay, did our parents file? How did they file? They filed married. Did they have pension income? No, my parents are not retired. And here's where we put our parents' SSNs. So we're going to say, and we got mom as parent one, parent two, maybe parent two uses the tax ID. So we'll throw in parent two's tax ID, that's dad, and everything's good to go. So again, I would only use the checkbox if this parent really does not have either credential. Now, again, I had a school counselor reach out to me about this, saying, oh, privacy disclosures and students don't want to give out their parents' ITINs. We're going to have them apply through the alt pathway. HESC is going to get their parents' ITIN through the alt pathway. So it's the same. They're giving it to New York State. New York State is protecting their information. It's not shared with the federal government. So whether they apply through DREAM, whether they apply through traditional, whether they apply through alt, either way, HESC is going to request and want to have that parent's ITIN. So there's no reason to abort from this process because the parent has an ITIN and want to initiate another pathway where they'll end up giving it to us anyway. So we'll just throw in our socials. We're going to go next. And now we do need to look at our tax return for line 37, which is our New York State taxable income, which is pretty much the main line of income on the tax return, on the New York State tax return that we're looking for to determine TAP eligibility. Someone has asked me, a few people have asked in the past, like, okay, well, if we're running them through income verification, why don't we do what the feds do? Why don't we just, get their income passively instead of asking them to provide it? And the reason we ask them to provide it up front is because we find out, and many schools are aware of this, that not a lot of people, a lot of people, we verify them, their income goes through just fine. We get this number is confirmed. But there are some people who put zeros for everything. And there are some people who make more than zero. But there are also people who say they filed taxes when they didn't. So we need an income number to generate an award estimate. And we also need an income number in case they fail the income verification process long enough where we eventually sort of tap them out of the process and we just give them an award. If we didn't collect the income, we wouldn't have a way of tapping them out of the income verification process because we would have an incomplete application. So we are asking them to give us an income figure that we're going to use to base their award. We're going to do our best to verify it. And this is going to be the baseline amount. Now, if they put zero and we estimate they're getting a full TAP award, and then we find out the parents made 150,000, their application would be denied after income verification. But we do get this question a lot. We get a lot of students contacting us. Hey, when I did my TAP app, I thought I was going to get the full amount. Now, all of a sudden, 4 weeks later, I got an email from you and it's saying I'm only getting 500 per semester. And that's because they said their parents' income was zero when it was really 110,000. So it's really important that they put a number that's close as best as possible if they don't have their taxes in front of them to what the parents' income really is instead of putting zeros for everything. Because yes, award amounts will change after income verification is completed. So here we want to know, are either of our parents disabled? We're going to say no. And now we're transitioning back to student information. Again, a screen that's a landing screen that's going to refocus our applicant to say, applicant, student, we are asking about you. So make sure on the following screens, you're giving us your information. So what we're going to start with the student is whether they filed a tax return. What has become one of our more common errors at this time is that students will repeat their parents' tax filing information in the student income section of the TAP app. So we are looking at some enhancements in the near future that will call out if a student looks like they're repeating the same tax information that they provided for their parent on the prior screens. But really, the onus is on the applicant to make sure they're reading the application that they're answering the questions for. And it clearly says, student spouse, did you file a New York tax return? If my student, 17 years old in high school, they don't work, they did not file. It's going to ask them, did they file a federal tax return? Nope, I didn't file any. They'll continue. Now, if the student did file, let's say they did a federal, not a state, it would ask them to provide their AGI, their filing status. It would follow them through. For this demonstration's purposes, we're only just going to look at a student who's a non-filer. So now the student said they didn't file, and it's going to ask them, did you have any unreported untaxed income for 2024 that you need to report? So this is the 26-27 aid year. It's going to be using the 2024 tax year as the basis for determining the award amount, similar to FAFSA. So here our student would say, okay, maybe in summer 2024, I had a little part-time job, I made $1,000. But if they didn't work at all in 2024, then they may put zero. They really need to be careful because if they do this, which we see, I don't know why, but some people feel inclined to fill in all zeros. Then it's going to look like they made, $3 million and it's going to deny them. So we sometimes get this question from colleges. They're like, well, we're looking at the student's FAFSA and it looks like they're approved and they're getting a Pell Grant, but TAP is denied. And they say, well, why are you guys denying TAP? HESC, you're so evil. And then we go back and we look at the student's application and they did this. They said they made $3,500,000 in untaxed income. And we can't verify. Anybody who puts untaxed income, they're saying they didn't file taxes. How do you verify that? You can't. So it's up to the applicant to correct that. We may ask for supporting documentation to support removing or adjusting it. So like a IRS wage and income transcript showing that this student didn't work or that it should be 3,500, not 3,500,000. And then we would make that correction. So that's something students need to be mindful of, these kind of silly data entry errors when they're applying. Does our student have other family members who will be attending college full time? So this is another area where people are making a mistake commonly. They say, yes, oh yeah, I have other family members. They key in on the buzzwords. Do I have other family members? Yes. So I'm gonna go yes. I'm gonna continue. I'm gonna list me, I'm gonna list my mom, my dad, my 5-month-old baby sister, grandma's here too. We get literally like this whole page filled out with their whole entire family. As the instructions on this page indicate, it should only be family members who will be enrolled as full-time matriculated college students during the same academic year as our student who's applying for TAP. So yes, if they have a brother who's we'll bring back, stepbrother Ronnie Dart. He is going to college, next year. And at the same time as me, I'll put that he's my brother and we're good to go. I can continue. But they do want to make sure we sometimes have adult students. They put their dependent children on here thinking, oh, I want to let Hess know I have kids to feed. So they'll list all of their, 5-year-old, 6-year-old kid, 7-year-old kid on here. If they list people on here who are not family members in college, we do verify that. So we use a verification process where we look to see, did this applicant file for TAP? In which case, if they did and they're certified by their college, we know definitely, yes, Ronnie Dart is a full-time student in college. And then if we can't match them to an existing TAP application, we do something called a VIAC, verification of income adjustment claim, where we send the student a letter saying we need authorization from your brother, Ronnie Dart, that we could use their information through the National Clearinghouse to verify that Ronnie Dart is in fact enrolled as a full-time student for the 26-27 academic year. Student will have Ronnie Dart sign that letter, send it back to us, and then later in the year, we will try to verify that Ronnie Dart is really in college. We typically do these verifications in the spring because what if Ronnie didn't start college in the fall? What if Ronnie started college in the spring? Then that's typically why we wait to the spring. We are looking at doing multi-semester verification through the clearinghouse as a possible way to avoid these late term adjustments, because unfortunately, this happens March, April. We find out that, we've been giving the student a higher TAP award because they said mom, dad, little brother, little sister, everybody's in college, when in fact, none of those people are in college. And now all of a sudden, the student's TAP award drops from 1,000 per semester to 500. Or in some cases, it may be why they qualified at all, and it drops to 0. They're ineligible because all of these people are not really in college. So again, it's really important that they understand what they're filling out here. So that way there's no surprises about people being removed. So that way we're not readjusting awards and we can avoid that kind of nasty business of having to remove or reduce TAP awards because of failed family member verification. So I'm going to go back. Oops, my bad. Yeah, no, they're not going to be in college, and I'm going to continue. So now we go to our signature section. We're almost done. We have our parents who are going to be our first signers, and then we're going to transition to our student. You notice here we do have the dissent to disclosure communication and also our personal privacy notice. This is meant for the parents because this is a page the parents are supposed to be reviewing to provide their signature. So the parents are going to review, say, yes, I agree to all of this, and then move on to proceed to signing. There are 2 methods that parents can choose to sign. They could choose to e-sign, which is only available if they have an ID card issued by the New York State Department of Motor Vehicles, or they could choose to paper sign if they do not have a ID card with the New York State Department of Motor Vehicles. So e-sign, a pop-up window would come up. I'm not sure if Zoom is going to share this right. So given the screen share, I try to move it to the middle. I'm not sure if you could see it. But they would basically fill out their driver's license number, date of birth, read the terms and conditions, click affirm, and then type their name and submit. And if it matches with DMV records, quick match, then they will get a successful sign. They'll come back. This page will disappear. If it fails, they'll get red messaging on the screen saying that they are not being matched by the New York State Department of Motor Vehicles. Some people will, have complained to us, oh, I keep trying, it's not working, it's not working. Sometimes it's a PII error back here. Back when I was putting in my parents' information, I put something wrong. I put the wrong name or social, and that's why it's not matching to DMV. Other times it's technology. It may just fail at that moment, may not be working at that moment in time. If they cannot e-sign, then paper sign is the backup option. Paper sign will open up a pop-up window. Again, I'm not sure if Zoom is going to share this pop-up window, but I'm putting it in that share box. And that pop-up would have the paper page that they could print. Parent would sign and they put the date. And then when we process their application, a request would be made to the student. Hey, you're missing your parent signatures. Can you upload those pages that you signed? So this is not something they could immediately, paper signature pages are not immediately something they could submit. They need to wait until their application goes through, and then they'll be requested to submit those paper signatures. Everything can be uploaded. There is an address on there to mail it, but mailing is optional. They don't have to mail it. And then we would update them accordingly. One other thing to note is that if parents are married, they do not need signatures of both parents. So here we have, I chose to paper sign for my mom, and I'm not choosing to do anything for my dad. As long as one of these two married parents are signing, they're good to go. They hit continue, and you notice they're moved on to the review and submit area. So only one of two married parents need to sign. Both do not need to sign. If both want to sign, that's fine. And obviously, if it's a single parent, then the one parent that they listed needs to sign. So here I have a final chance to review everything, make sure that all my info is right. If something is wrong, I can click modify your answer. It'll send me back. I can then make my changes and then come back to the review screen and review everything again. So I'm carefully going through. Yeah, that's mom, dad. They're married. Their social and ITINs are all correct. Filed in New York return. They're married. Yeah, everything's good. Here, yeah, me, I didn't file. So hopefully your students are doing this. We know some are not. But this would give them the chance to make sure everything looks good. And then they could then continue and then do the student signature. Now, I did get an email today. Somebody was asking like, oh, our student is not able to sign their application online. So there's no DMV ID requirement or anything like that to sign the TAP application online. It's simply just the student sign your name and hit I affirm and submit. So there should not be any technical issues or ID issues that are preventing the student from e-signing, because it's simply, we've already verified the student's ID when they applied through the account creation process through HESPIN. So they're allowed to simply just affirm and type their name and then submit. And congratulations, we are done. Now, when I see this congratulations screen, I know I've successfully submitted, and immediately I'm going to get an email notification to my inbox that says I successfully submitted. Again, sometimes students are bringing these emails to their colleges or to their high school counselor saying, I swear to everything holy, I filed the TAP app, but HESC is saying, or my college is saying that I didn't file for TAP. Remember, it could be one of those PII issues we talked about earlier, right? Wrong name, wrong social, date of birth. So yeah, maybe they really did file, but they did a bogus application because they provided us bogus information from the start. So if I create my HESC account with bogus information, I am destined to fail this application process. I'm already setting myself up for failure. So it's really, really important, especially now in the absence of the API, where the PII data from FAFSA is not being transferred to HESC, that the students do take the care and to make sure that they are creating their accounts correctly and applying with their accounts. Another thing on that topic is students creating second accounts. We have some students when they're trying to get in. Let's say the student went to college 5 years ago, made a HESC account back in 2021, and now they want to apply for TAP for 2026. They go in and they try to log in with a new account because they don't remember they made one 5 years ago. And it says, you already have an account on file, or something errors out. And they're like, I don't remember. I'm just going to make another one. So then they click to register another one, but you can't use the same social security number on an active account to create a new account. So we notice some students will fudge their social security number, just saying, oh, no, it's still me, it's my name. If, again, a secondary or third account is created with bogus information, there's no way of matching that. Sometimes we don't even know. We need that bogus number to know, yeah, did the student create a bogus account? Because when we look with their real SSN, we can see, nope, they don't have an account, or they have an account that was made 5 years ago and they haven't logged into it for 5 years. So even though they're swearing they applied and they printed this screen, they used a bogus account. So again, doomed to fail due to the account creation issues. So we'll stop share and we can open up for Q&A. I think we have plenty of time for that.
Good. thing. So yes, we will do the Q&A. We have quite a few questions. But before we get started with questions, there are many questions from FAAs who are asking about additional training on things like TAP certification, the DREAM Act application, ID match files and stuff. Where can we go to sign up for additional trainings or find additional trainings that are coming in the future for financial aid professionals? Also, you're still muted.
So I'm sharing our HES.ny.gov page, and under our academic partners dropdown, there's an area for financial aid professionals with their resources and also school counselors where they could find similar training and resources. So if I'm a financial aid professional, I'll click in here. We are launching the 26-27 TAP app on October 1st. So there's a message here about some outages we're going to have this weekend as we flip the switches that are needed to be flipped. But under here right away, this message usually wouldn't be here. I would see webinars and training. And so we have a bunch of different already pre-recorded trainings, stuff that I've done in the past that people can review. So we cover a number of different topics. There's training on TAP, which covers DREAM Act, TAP eligibility, part-time TAP, non-degree TAP. We also have our scholarships, which covers Excelsior, healthcare workers. So we do have some ones on there, and we're going to look to refresh these as we go into the fall. We usually typically do these in the fall and in the spring. So these are what we did last fall, and as we do new ones, we'll replace any ones that are dated, but these are the most recent ones that we've done. And typically when we do trainings for financial aid professionals, we really want to make sure you're signed up for our emails. So you could sign up here at the bottom because we send them out through our bulletins. So typically we will send financial aid bulletins to schools. Right here are news and updates. So, anybody who signed up for our news and updates as a financial aid administrator, you don't even have to check our site because we would email you when there are new events. We just did recently post a whole schedule of new webinars for college access community, and some of our financial aid partners are joining those as well. So we know that those went out that cover those various topics, DREAM Act, Alt Pathway, stuff like that for high schools. We have school counselors. We definitely want to make sure in our FAFSA Ready training program, this is that initiative where we do all those training modules on TAP, alt eligibility, special circumstances. Our comms team, shout out Jeffrey and Dan Cooper, everybody in there. They really put together great programs. So again, if I'm a school counselor or even if I'm a financial aid professional, I want to, be a part of this stuff. You could sign up for our newsletters. So that way you can be in the know about any of our offerings on the college access side. So, it doesn't hurt as a financial aid professional to have sign up for both.
Awesome. Thank you. That was super informative. Okay, so let's get into some TAP specific questions. If the main contributor is remarried, does the step parent need to also be included?
Yes. So it's the rules are, and we had one the other day from a college. When I'm filling out the TAP app and I'm sitting there and mom's there and stepdad's in the kitchen, it says, what is your parents' current marital status? So if I look over, I know there's mom, there's stepdad, they got married last year. I'm filling out my 26-27 TAP or FAFSA app. My mom is currently remarried to my stepdad, that guy over there. Maybe I don't even like that guy. I do have to include that guy on my application. I have to put that my parents married/remarried, the month and year, even if my mom and that guy I don't like over there didn't file their taxes together in 2024. If they are currently remarried to one another, I do need to include both their infos and incomes. So there's no, we had one person say to us, oh, but I didn't do my taxes with them in that year. It doesn't matter. I would say to them, you shouldn't have gotten remarried. So it's the rules.
Thanks for that. Another one is, if a parent contributor files taxes married filing joint with their spouse and chooses not to, actually, this is the FAFSA question, but still, I keep asking it. If a parent contributor files taxes married filing joint with their spouse, and chooses not to invite their spouse to the FAFSA application, is the parent contributor required to report the demographic information for their spouse? What's that look like? So that might
Renee,
actually be a Renee
Renee,
question.
you want to echo that response?
Yeah, so when I was looking at the FSA PowerPoint that they put out, all it's when if there is a married filing jointly situation, the parent contributor one is going to be the signer of the FAFSA, but they are going to provide just basic information about that secondary of their spouse. So that is not going to require any additional action based on what I saw on the PowerPoint that was shared with us. So it's just providing very basic information about that spouse, and that married filing jointly parent will have the option to sign and submit the FAFSA for the student when they get to the end of the application after they've certified their signature.
Thanks. If a parent tax return is completed by the parent with their current spouse, dad does not need to accept any invitation and complete any part of the FAFSA on their own. However, the parent, in this case, mom, will need to provide info for dad. Okay, guess that's not a question, but thank you for that information, anonymous attendee. Okay, other question. They're specifically about skeleton records and how they're created.
So there are two different types of skeleton records. There are records for when a student has filed what we call an acknowledgement, where they file the FAFSA, but there isn't a TAP application associated with that FAFSA yet. So what we do is we send a notification to the student that says, hey, student, we got a FAFSA for you. It looks like you're a New York resident. You want to go to college in New York. Why don't you come on over and do a TAP app? So in that case, what we do is we build a skeleton record or acknowledgement record for them, which will be the baseline of what we will then use to populate their TAP application when they applied. So that usually indicates to a college, if you're looking at it, because only colleges would see skeleton records, that the student hasn't applied yet. In some minor instances, it could be that the student applied, but there's an application error that it didn't process correctly. Typically, those skeleton records would look a little bit different. They'd have a little bit more data populated. They'd have school codes on them, maybe even roster numbers. It looks like it was on a roster. Now all of a sudden it's a skeleton. We are working on an issue. We found a few for 25, 26 that we've identified that we're working on fixing. Usually we find these proactively and fix them, but colleges are welcome at any time to reach out to us at Priority Services to get support on reviewing a particular record if they believe it's the broken kind and not the my student didn't apply kind.
Awesome. Thank you. Another person says for 25, 26, I've had a number of students apply for TAP or thought they were applying for TAP, but actually applied for scholarships only. They're asking if there is a scholarship only payment application versus like the regular flavor version.
So yes, this issue impacts only continuing applicants. So when someone is a continuing applicant and has a history of scholarships with us, they have the option when they start the TAP app. When we were just in the live demo, we were at that 26, 27 screen. They would say, yes, I want to do 26, 27. They go next. And they would get a summary screen that says, hey, we see you have a bunch of scholarships with us. You have, Excelsior, STEM, the Scholarship for Academic Excellence. And at the bottom of the screen, which people are not reading, it says, are you here to do just your scholarships or do you want to do TAP? And if they say no, there's a toggle, then they get a short application, which only serves to renew their eligibility for scholarships. So this process was built because some of our scholarship applications do not require the full TAP application. Excelsior does require it, STEM does require it, but SAE, let's say the parents make $1 million a year and they don't want to have to disclose all their info and income just so their kid can get their scholarship for academic excellence renewed, then it's a short and sweet application where they just provide what colleges I'm going to, sign the bottom, and they submit. It's really short. Well, if the student's intention was to apply for TAP and that scholarship, then when they're processed by us, the schools are only going to see their scholarship. And schools, we get many inquiries from schools, but schools would know this if they looked a little further at the record at what we're offering the student. So if they're looking at it and it says, oh, there's no income verification, and there's a message on it that says you've been processed for scholarships only, or sometimes it says you don't have a scholarship that's eligible to be used through this process, because let's say they're no longer eligible for that scholarship, then you would also see at the bottom just the scholarship being awarded in the payment data. So that typically means your student did not file for TAP. To students, they're none the wiser. They think, oh, I filed something and it was TAP. And hey, by the way, it was really easy to file. So we really, again, it's really important that they read. We are looking at some enhancements and some restrictions on who gets offered that scholarship only app to try to require it from the longer TAP app from a greater group of applicants. So it is something that we're going to be addressing and hopefully minimizing the impact over the years to come. But it's really going to be important that students, again, read what they're filling out and select the right responses.
Yes, reading is quite important. Thank you. How long is a TAP application held until a FAFSA is submitted?
So typically 45 days from when it's submitted. So if, I submitted today, I don't have a FAFSA, or maybe I have a FAFSA, but it's not processed. We give it 45 days. The student will get a warning email that they're coming up to the time that we might purge their application. So it'll say, hey, we're waiting for a FAFSA from you. And then they'll get a final notification past the 45 days that says this application has been purged and you're going to need to reapply once you figure out your FAFSA, whatever issue it was. Now, sometimes students are alarmed by those emails, and they should be, because they should be looking to see if it's saying there's an issue with my FAFSA. Well, is my FAFSA processed, right? I talked about dependency model Z, provisional independence. We talked about dependency model X, rejected dependents. If I'm on this call and I'm a college financial aid administrator, then you should know what those statuses are. And if you know that you just helped the student fix their rejected or provisional independent status, then probably the TAP application they submitted 5 months ago is not going to be usable. So, right away I would be advising the student, hey, look, your FAFSA has been broken. We just fixed it. You're going to need to reapply for TAP. But again, if a school wanted to reach out to us and say, hey, did this get purged? Do they need to reapply? We'd be happy to look up the record and check that information.
So Danielle and Mike, that question came up a lot in the Q&A. So I had set 14 days. So Mike, your 45 days is better than my 14 and more accurate. So just wanted to make that note that I had responded 14. So it's 45.
Yep. Yeah. It was, and there was also some confusion about save length. That the help instructions used to say TAP apps would only save for like a day, 24 hours, but that's actually also 45 days. It's stuff that we've checked with, we verified through our procedures and with our vendors.
Brilliant. Thank you. Because yeah, that question came up quite a lot. Let's see. Next question. You did mention that there was some trainings and how to access the trainings, but do you know if there's any scheduled webinars that would cover DREAM Act and the alternative pathways coming up soon?
I think we just sent out a suite of webinars. I'm not sure if our communications, I know I got a bunch of emails to Priority Services that were saying that people were having some issues signing up. But again, I will shameless plug the website again. You could take a look at our FAFSA Ready training program, see what's coming up down there, sign up for news and updates, and also the financial aid professionals area, sign up for news and updates to see what's coming out soon.
Brilliant. Thank you. I just scrolled and lost my spot again. Let's see. For out-of-state students who are eligible for SUNY Reconnect but are still required to fill out the TAP, do they complete the regular TAP application? And for clarification, they're eligible due to receiving in-state tuition because they're military.
So I just sorry about that. I'm getting pinged by communications. There is a Alt Path and DREAM Act webinar on Monday. It's on the FAFSA Ready site. So so whoever was asking for that, check our site. It should be there on Monday. Danielle, can you repeat the question? Please forgive me.
Oh, totally, she says, scrolling frantically to go and find the question again. Yes, it was something about SUNY Reconnect.
Okay.
Now I can't find it.
Yeah, it sounds super specific. Maybe it should be sent to Priority Services.
So, Mike, the question was regarding in-state, a student who is a New York State resident or maybe outside the state, and because of serving in the military, do they qualify for in-state? Do they qualify for TAP because they're receiving in-state tuition?
So typically, yes, if somebody's on active duty and they apply for TAP, we'll give them in-state tuition. We have those waivers, those military residency provisions. So the service member in question just needs to fill out our app and we'll review them and we may ask for their orders to see that they are. And as long as they are were a New York resident at the, before they enlisted at the time of enlistment, that typically will qualify for residency.
Brilliant. Thank you. Are students notified if a FAFSA can't be found for a student when TAP is completed?
Are schools notified or are students notified?
The students. A lot of people ask this question, actually.
Yep, so remember, there's two sets of emails we send students. We send them one email that says, hey, we're trying to process your TAP app, but there's no FAFSA record for you, or there's problems with your FAFSA, go check it out. And then that's the first, shot across the bow warning. And then the second one is the one that says it's been purged because we couldn't process it. We've been waiting, and FAFSA never turned up for you. So now you have to start all over again.
Awesome. This one appears to be coming from an FAA. I've noticed that several students have been submitting 25, 26 TAP applications and are being denied with the message award denied. You have applied for renewal of only your scholarships, but you don't have any scholarships.
Yep.
And
yeah, we talked about that. That's the scholarship only thing that we went through, Danielle. So we're good there.
Cool. What is the pathway for parents without social security numbers on the FAFSA application?
So remember, eligibility for Title IV student aid is contingent on the student's citizenship status. So if our student is a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, but the parents are not, FAFSA doesn't collect that info. So they could do the FAFSA and just indicate that the parents don't have socials and go through the contributor process that way. On the TAP app, same thing. Student is eligible. They did their FAFSA. They would just indicate through the TAP application process that the parents do not have socials. We would still ask for income and all of that. And then there's affirmation. We ask them to confirm whether or not the parents. So there'll be what we call a parent SSN form, which is actually something we've updated for 26, 27 to simplify it a little bit. It's a form that just double checks with the applicant that their parent really doesn't have a social, because we notice sometimes applicants will check the box that their parent doesn't have a social because they don't have the information with them at the moment when they're applying. So we want to make sure that someone who's making that declaration, my parents don't have a social or tax ID, they get a second chance to provide it or to reaffirm that they don't have one. So that would be an RFI document that the student would have to complete at the end after their TAP application is processed.
Thank you. If a student is residing in temporary housing, what address should they enter on applications?
For New York State, we'd want their current address. I don't know, FAFSA, I would assume it would be similar, Renee.
I would say the same, yes.
So an address is something that can be updated after the fact.
Yeah, it can definitely. Address is one of those fluid areas. I mean, depending on how they apply, it could lead to a residency review, but we've had students in shelter and temporary housing who we've approved once we've gotten that documentation.
Excellent.
And Danielle, if I can just add to that. So most times these are students who are housing insecure, and so they're worried about not getting the information, but most information for financial aid purposes right now is online. So as long as they have online access and can get their information through their studentaid.gov account or through their HESC ID account, then they should be okay.
Yes, students should always be checking their email and preferably using a personal email versus a school-specific email so that they will have access to this information. Thank you. Next one is a question. Our IT department noticed some issues with the security certificate on the HESC website. Is that being worked on?
I wasn't aware of it. That person should email Priority Services so we could take a look.
Excellent. Thank you. Please send an email to Priority Services. Um, can there be an indicator, or is there an indicator on HESC's web to show any HESC PIN account issues like the name, SSN, date of birth mismatch, so that people helping students fill out the FAFSA or sorry, TAP application can better assist the applicants?
We could take a look at that. I mean, there's yeah, we'll take a look at that. I can see how that could be helpful. So yeah, we'll take a look and see if we're allowed to share that or if there's a way that we can share that to make that a screen available to schools.
Brilliant. Thank you, Byron, for that suggestion. Another question, when a parent doesn't have a social security number and is anticipating an email from the federal government, do you know of any parent who has successfully received that email? I think this is referring to a FAFSA question.
I mean, there's not a lot of information given there. So if a student invites their parent contributor with their email address, I mean, and the parent gets that email address with the invitation, there was not a lot of information given on this question. So I personally have not, because I mean, the FAFSA for 26-27, I've not helped anyone with that yet. That's going to be another couple weeks yet. So I'm not sure if any of my other partners that have had the good fortune of seeing this live so far have experienced any issues. I personally have not.
Okay. Barring no additional comment, thank you for that.
Danielle, real quick, going back to Byron. Byron, can you email that request to Priority Services? That way I can start escalating it up the chain and saying it's something that schools would like to have. Sorry, Danielle.
No, it's cool. If a student clicks that they're not applying for TAP on the application, can they go in and fix that in the same application, or do they have to reapply entirely?
I'm sorry, what's the part that needs to be fixed?
If they're click that they're not applying for TAP on the application.
So they can come back and complete the full experience. So if I do the short pathway, the scholarship only pathway, and I now want to come back and say, hey, I need to do TAP. There's two ways that students will typically do it. One is to go back to the TAP app and it'll bring them back and it'll say, you filed for scholarships only. Do you want to complete for TAP? And they can go back and then answer the additional questions, go through the whole experience that we saw today to request TAP. The other thing that sometimes students will do is they go into the RFI process to make application changes. They go into their account and edit their scholarship application, and they start throwing all the information at us that they didn't provide. They say, hey, here's my parents' info, here's their socials, here's their income. When we see that, we typically then look at their app, we see it's a scholarship app, and we intuit, hey, this person's trying to give us this info to apply for TAP. So we will do the conversion. Sometimes schools will also reach out to us and say, hey, this person meant to apply for TAP, can you flip them? And we will flip them. The only thing that we caution is that if the student's going to go through the full experience themselves and reapply for TAP, has to be consistent with what they put on their scholarship app, because if they start changing things, it could break their current application, which leads to some of these processing issues that we have. Where, for example, let's say I say I'm going to Hunter College on my short app for summer, fall, spring. Then I go ahead and do the fall TAP app and I say, hey, you know what? I think I'm transferring to Brooklyn College in the spring. So when they do their TAP app, now they put a different set of school codes than when they did their scholarship only app. That can break in processing and cause some issues for us. So it really needs to be consistent with what they file when they're doing a long app, a TAP app after doing a short one, scholarships.
Thanks. Does the TAP application have any questions about legal guardianship? It's not listed as one of the special circumstances.
So legal guardianship counts under involuntary dissolution. So it's just part of that whole blanket thing that there's something that happened where I'm no longer, my parents are no longer responsible for me. Someone else is. So someone in legal guardianship should be checking the involuntary dissolution. All circumstances, whichever bubble I click, we're going to get the docs. And in our document review, when they provide us the court paperwork or supporting counsel letters, we read, review all of that. And if they, are deserving of a higher award because they're an orphan, foster youth, ward of the court, we'll grant that. But if the status really is an involuntary dissolution, then, we'll grant that status. So it's the document, the devil's in the details of the documents that we end up getting.
All right. If you have students who complete FIS with all no's accidentally, but also check no for claiming independent from parent, is there any logic that makes sure the student is answering that correctly before submitting?
So no, it's on them. We are looking at the reverse situation where they're trying to say they're independent, but then answer the parent questions, the FIS questions about living with parents. Because we did notice some people are, a foster youth as a teen, and they, are now out of the system and maybe living back with their parents. So we are looking at potential enhancements in a future year, not this year, to try to help push independent students through more automatically and get them into the verification process, so we can, remove the barriers for declaring independence so it's not so nuanced. So we are looking at those enhancements, but for now, they do need to be careful with the questions and how they answer them. But again, students can always send us docs. So even if I have an applicant who botched the questions, it's asking for parent info, they're stuck in missing information, but this person has a legal guardian assigned by the New York State Court, they could just upload the document. When we get it, we'll know right away, oh, this is a student who should be independent, and we'll fix it. So we'll take care of it if they just provide the documents.
Brilliant. How long does income verification normally take, if you're able to give a time frame? And is there anything that the student has to do for it, or do they just have to wait?
So income verification typically runs, we have different cycles that run every week. So we have our traditional first or full cycle, which runs everybody through the process. That's bi-monthly. Then we have our last name program, which tries to match people's parents who have different last names on the TAP app than what they put on their FAFSA. That runs once a month. And then we have our high income denials flow, which is a process that takes everybody who put a super high income by accident or maybe on purpose, and it will verify if they really should be denied due to that high income. So it really depends on when the student applies as to when they'll fall into one of those cycles. But typically they get run at least twice a month. And the students don't have to do anything unless there's a problem. So if it fails, we can't match because the student says they filed a tax return when they really didn't, or it's the parent. The student will get an email message from us that week when it fails, telling them that they need to go back, look at their TAP app, and make corrections. Majority of our income verification failures are due to poor information on the TAP app, bad parent SSNs, incorrect parent last names, incorrect filing statuses. Again, I mentioned before, one of our common errors is the student says they filed and they repeat their parents' tax information. It ends up causing the student to be estimated with a lower TAP award. So we fix a lot of those. So these are things that students can go back. If they failed the program, they could go back and they can go into their TAP applications and they can make edits. It's typically the first line of what we recommend, and that's what we send to students in emails. We really don't want to have documentation sent to us if it's not needed. We have a lot of schools and even some students who proactively email us tax returns and transcripts. We didn't ask for it. And then we get the transcript and we can see, oh, yeah, we have the last 4 digits for this parent wrong. And we just end up fixing it and sending them back through. So we really want schools, who are typically the ones who ask the most about this, to make sure they're sitting with the student and going through their TAP app, because the vast majority of our income verification questions, we know schools aren't really looking. They're just kind of getting the student. The student says there's a problem. They're like, okay, we'll just ask. One of the ones that really, schools would know about, like if you're reaching out to us and you're saying, hey, the student is failing income verification, if you take a peek at their FAFSA and they have failed the FTI process, parent says they filed, they made $90,000 and they're 214, IRS has no return on them, or they're a 211 PII match. Well, FAFSA is already telling you there's a problem. So why don't that would, intuit that there's going to be a problem with IVP for TAP. So we definitely recommend that schools take a peek at the students' ISA records when they're failing IVP to make sure that there's not already a PII issue or 214 non-filer issue on the ISA record, which would definitely lead to someone saying they filed taxes when they didn't.
Awesome, thank you. So we are actually at time. The webinar is scheduled to be at 12 to end at 12:30. So with that being said, there are several questions that have been unanswered. So if you guys could hang out for longer, that would be great. Otherwise, we will end at our scheduled time. I do want to thank both Mike and Renee for all of their excellent information that they have provided to us today, as well as let everyone know that there's going to be a link to the recording that will be posted on the NICEFA website. And I'm going to share my screen real quick. And I'm going to steal it from Mike, and I'm going to share screen 3. Share. Okay. You all should be seeing my screen now. So this is the NICEFA website. If you are looking for any of the trainings that have been posted and recorded, this one will be recorded under free webinars, and you hit free webinar archive. Once you're on there, you will be able to see any of the previous free webinars that have been posted. So for instance, last year's FAFSA and TAP training has posted here, as well as any of the handouts or resources that were available with that. If you are interested in joining NICEFA, we are always happy to have more friends hop aboard. It is a very cheap membership, and you can apply right here on our NICEFA website. Also, a quick pitch for the upcoming annual NICEFA conference, which will be held this year in Rochester from October 15th through 17th. And early bird registration is still open and available, so apply today. And that is all I have. We're going to take maybe 1 or 2 more questions, and then I think we'll be ending for today. Does that sound good?
Now, did we want to mention one more thing? I can't remember if we did this in the intro about the news about the FAFSA being available.
Oh, yeah, that's
and
probably
the
important.
reminder that the TAP is not quite yet.
Yes, thank you so much for that reminder. So for those of you who may or may not have seen the news, the FAFSA is open and available. Yay, FAFSA. So you can go ahead and apply to that. That is at studentaid.gov/FAFSA. However, because things cannot be moved quickly in the government, the TAP application will open at its original scheduled date, October 1st. So students who are filling out the FAFSA application will be able to fill out a TAP application starting October 1st. You may wish to wait until October 1st and not be an early adopter, but that is up to you and your families and your scheduled events. Thank you for that reminder, Renee. And I believe that is all we're going to have. Thank you everyone for attending. We had nearly 1,000 attendees today, so yay, that was awesome. And I hope everyone has a wonderful, fantastic rest of the week and weekend, and enjoy everything fall and pumpkin spice. I'm Danielle Emily from SUNY Upstate Medical University, sending out a big thank you to Mike Turner, Renee Swift, and Lasagna Griggs for helping us answer any of the questions that we had. And have an amazing day. Thanks, everyone.